started here. A few people might be rolling in, but before we jump and dive into all of the good content here and I pass it off to our two speakers today, just want to go over a few housekeeping rules and some things you're going to expect for today's webinar. First off, this is recorded, so everybody will be emailed a live recording after we have concluded our event today. And then also we will be having a few polls throughout our webinar today. And what that will happen and what that will look like is a pop-up will come up on your screen. These are not mandatory, but we do encourage you to participate. And you just will select one of the options that pops up and click submit, and then we will be able to have those live answers and kind of have discussion around that. Lastly, we do have questions tab at the bottom of the right hand of your screen. Feel free to add in any questions that you may have, as we will leave about 15 minutes at the end of the webinar to have a discussion around any questions that come in. And these are private, so only us as the owners of the webinar can see this. So feel free to ask anything that you may have questions on. So with that, without further ado, I will pass it to Andy to get our webinar kicked off.
Great. Thank you, Kelsey. Good morning, everybody. I'm Andy Wright, founder of the Credit Union Product Strategy Network, or CUPS. And before we get into the presentation, I just want to thank RAZR for sponsoring today's session and for putting together such a thought-provoking look at reward strategy. And for those who are newer to the group, CUPS is a peer community for product pros and the product curious, as we like to say, across the credit union movement. It's a trusted space where credit union leaders can share what's working, ask questions, and help shape what the discipline looks like. And I also wanted to give a quick thank you to two people who've been invaluable in making CUPS what it is today. That's Matt Vance and Derek Ross, who've given generously of their time and expertise to help us shape our programming and support the growth of this great community. I'm really grateful to both of them. Recording will be available to CUPS members afterwards. I just want to thank you all for coming. And with that, let's get into it. Back to you.
All right. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Kelsey. Hello, everyone. I'm going to be your host for most of the rest of the session here today. So maybe at first I'll tell you a little bit about RAZR. So if you don't know us, we are a loyalty and rewards technology company. So we have this amazing platform that helps power loyalty and engagement programs all over the place. I play a small role here, trying to help with some of the strategy and consulting things that we like to bring to the table. Maybe a little bit more about me. I was doing my history calculation in my head this morning, and I realized this is my anniversary. I've been in loyalty officially for 20 years as of earlier this year, actually. So it's been a long time. It's gone by in a blink. I love the space. I'm still having fun here. I focus mostly on financial institutions right now, but I've played a role in loyalty and CPG, retail, travel and hospitality, the whole 9 yards. So I'm deep in this space, and I thoroughly enjoy it, and hopefully I can bring some learnings to everyone today. With that, let's dive in. So what are we talking about today? Well, we're going to get into cashback versus experiences. And so most of you are probably pretty familiar with cashback, right? This is super well known. Some of you may not be as familiar with experiences. So what we want to try to do today is kind of lay out the difference between these two and talk about the important aspects of each one, because they are both important, as you're going to see. I don't want to lead the witness and hint at kind of where we end up with the conversation, but we're going to cover both. We're going to talk about why they both make sense, and the role that they could or should play in any sort of program that you're bringing to your members. So I quickly want to just kind of hint at what this might look like when we think about other things, right? So, are you team Android? Are you team Apple? Personally, I'm an Apple guy. I've tried the Android world, but we have dedicated people on both sides of this fence, right? And they have all their reasons for wanting to be fans of one of those ecosystems. Same with shoes or sporting goods, Nike, Adidas. I probably said that wrong. Nike guy myself, but lots of fans on both sides of the fence here, and both with very rational reasons for why they would want to do that. This one maybe is a little clearer. We probably have more Starbucks fans, but love Dunkin', think they do great. But what we're seeing here is a pattern, right? We have very compelling offerings from different companies that make sense depending on the person that's engaging. Ford versus Chevy. Don't own either of those. Work with Ford though, so I have a little bias towards them. And then PlayStation versus Xbox. So the idea wasn't to ask all of you where you lean for each of these. It's to let you see, there's always differences. There's going to be reasons why people lean one way or the other. And what we hope to get through this is how we address that, how we think about, audiences that want or need cash back, that's their desire, versus audience that want or need experiences. And we're going to get into deeper into why that makes sense and kind of what we feel and what our approach is around this. We just want to hit a couple of statistics first, because I think these are important to ground us. So statistic from Fool.com, what type of credit card do you have? I think it's pretty interesting. 68% have a cashback card. Probably not surprising to most of us, right? Cashback still is king. Cash is still king. And we'll make that clear right up front. This is what people talk about. And this is why we see so many cards in this space. There's a ton of value here. And then we have, a variety of other cards coming in here. The kind of the gist I would take away from this slide though is, cashback at the top, but travel rewards is under that, is in second place, kind of a distant second place. And we're going to talk about why that might be. So just important to see how much is out there and how people are distributing these products in their wallets. Want to talk quickly about the motivators. So when we think about what motivates people to embrace one of these programs, what are their drivers? Okay, so cashback right at the top. I'm just going to cycle through these. Points right below that, which I think is pretty interesting. Let me actually just highlight all of these. Discounts and rewards, ease of payments, and we go right down the list to exclusive cardholder events. Now, cashback, I don't think anyone is surprised. 42% makes total sense. What you may be surprised in is points at 36%. So it's pretty close to what we see from cashback. There's a desire for points. And part of the reason is that is currency that has a little bit more flexibility in some people's minds than cashback. And you're going to see what this means when we get into some of the examples and we get some fun use cases that talk about this a little bit. We're still seeing cash is winning. Totally okay. It's to be expected, but let's see where the story goes from here. So when we talk about important program elements, what people really feel needs to rise to the top, no surprise, right at the top of the list, we've got these things that relate back to cash. Sounds like I'm carrying a theme here forward, right? But then we have a lot of stuff that relates back to more experiential. And this isn't just, I redeem for a cool trip or a cool concert. This is all the things that fit into an experiential world, right? Led by enhanced customer service, so important to driving loyalty and how that comes across. So it's good to see there's a balance and people are still expecting different elements across their programs and want to see how these things really support them and drive their loyalty for an institution. Most valuable features, same kind of theme, no annual fee, probably no surprise again, right at the top, followed closely by rewards being cashback, points, and miles. This to me is probably the important takeaway as we think about this conversation, right? Is look how important it is for a large percentage of this population to think about rewards in their relationship with a financial institution. So it's a kind of a pretty important number to keep an eye on, and we're going to see a little bit more about what that means here shortly. Double rewards points for years. So, there's a demand, there's a desire, there's an appetite. People want and actually expect some form of rewards when they're engaging with these types of products, which leads us to rewards are table stakes. This is a fascinating stat to me. 90% of general purpose card spend is on a rewards card. That is a crazy number when we think about it. And what's really important when I think about this as the takeaway is kind of two things. One is it's an expectation now. People expect this to be part of their programs. It's not really optional. It's just that's what people are looking for. And they're probably surprised when they see it's not. And the second piece, and this is even more important than what we're getting at today, in my view, is what's the differentiator? If everyone is offering cashback and 90% of spend happens on these types of cards, what differentiates my card or my product from someone next door to me or from someone down the street? So that differentiation is what becomes important to help set you apart, because everyone else is probably playing on the same level when we think about cashback and putting them into our rewards programs. Okay, we have a poll question. Kelsey, I'm going to put you on the spot and see if we can't get our poll going here, and we'll get everyone to chime into this. So I'll read these off really quick, but they'll pop up on your screen. What is the primary role of cashback in a rewards program today? Main driver of long-term loyalty? Is it table stakes for acquisition and participation? Is it no longer relevant, or it should replace all of the reward steps? So we'll give everyone just a moment to hit that poll and get our answers in. And Kelsey, I'll defer to you to let me know when we're ready and we want to share those results.
Yeah, a few results are coming in, and it looks like our largest is A, and it's the main driver of long-term loyalty.
Interesting. Yeah, not surprising. Good
Well,
stuff.
now we're coming up on it is table stakes for acquisition and participation.
Okay, so some pretty strong alignment here, right? What comes out of this is we know this is important to what we're trying to offer. And again, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, but glad to hear the feedback from the group that everyone's kind of aligned on that as well. So let's keep us moving here. I want to talk about redemption, because this is truly important, and this is where we feel we start to see a difference in how members act and respond. So we'll lead with the title. I frankly just love how this is stated. Redemption is the loyalty moment, right? Earning is going to drive your spend, and that's what people will game, and they're focusing on, and they're trying to see how that earning is. But it's that redemption moment that really drives that emotional connection, right? And if they feel good about it, they're going to advocate for your program. They're going to talk about it, and they're going to share those stories. And it's really going to make them feel stronger about your brand. And we're going to see some real examples that actually allude to this and show how we see this come forward in real life statistics and some great research studies that are out there. But it's important to remember is that the earning side is important, certainly because it's going to drive it, but it's that redemption moment that typically tips people over to be more loyal to a brand and talk about it more and really enjoy it and deepen that relationship. And as you saw, 90% of cards are table stakes. They have rewards. Loyalty's growing. It's not going away. It's been honestly surging for about a decade. Everyone still is trying to jump on to this bandwagon, and for good reason. But as much as loyalty is rising, we're seeing emotional loyalty dropping a little. So people are wanting to earn in these programs or wanting to take advantage of these great things that they're getting out of it, but they may not be creating that deep bond that's really going to keep them sticky to a brand. And it's not just financial institutions. This is just kind of across the board. So you may have started to hear more in the past couple of years, more of a focus on this emotional loyalty side. And this is really about, building that brand connection and keeping those people, loyal and sticky to you and to your brand. And that's just some of the things that we actually want to cover today and see if we can drive that. And I just want to lay out kind of what we think the core programs element are. And this is going to hint a little bit about where we're going to get to here. So financial value drives acquisition. So you saw everything about cashback up front. It's expected. People expect cashback in a program. And where it really drives value is it drives acquisition, right? It's going to be a key indicator when people are trying to decide what type of product that they're going to participate in. So it is an important element. I want to make sure we state that. Ease and flexibility matter. These are important. So we don't want to make programs super cumbersome and bring all this extra effort for people into. They get confused and they may end up not participating at all. But the bottom one is the fun one to me. Experiences drive emotional loyalty. These are the things that tip that little trigger in the brain that says, wow, that really impressed me. I really like this brand. I really want to stick around. And we're going to talk about how these mix together and how we can have some fun with them. Okay, this is probably my favorite slide, and it can be a little controversial. What people say is not what they do, and my survey friends always get anxious when I say something like that, because we talk to a lot of people, we get information, especially when we're doing large quantitative surveys. But the truth is, and we've seen this time and time again, you can ask someone what they're going to do, but when it comes time for them to actually make that real life decision in the moment, they may not do what they told you they're going to do. And as a matter of fact, we see a lot of examples where that is the case, where they're going to act differently because they're answering with something different in their mind, or they're trying to get something different across in that particular answer. And you're going to see this a little bit more as we move forward, but I think this is an important point to understand is, you can go out and ask your members and talk to them, and you should, right? I'm a big fan of human-centered design and design thinking, and that's core, right? Talking to people. But just remember, sometimes they're going to tell you, this is what I would do in this situation. But when it comes right down to it and they actually have to act, they may not do that. They may do something quite different. And this is an important point to what we see with loyalty programs, and especially redemption. So, and there's a reason they do this, right? So when people are asked, especially around cashback programs like this, they tend to lean towards cash. It's flexible, it's fungible, it's economically optimal. And there's this notion when you ask someone, would you prefer cash, or would you prefer this fun thing that's just special for you? Well, the rational thing is, if I'm trying to promote myself as a responsible individual, I should probably tell you, well, I prefer the cash, because that's the more responsible choice. And that's one of the reasons we see those numbers so high, right? We see cashback rising to the top, 62%, because people are answering in a way that sounds right. It sounds like the logical, rational choice. But the truth is, somewhere in their heads, they're thinking, man, it'd be really cool to take that trip to Hawaii instead of taking that cash back. But maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe that's not the responsible thing to do. So there's different reasons why people are going to respond differently. But I think it's good to understand that this is the case. We see this a lot, is the answers are not necessarily lined up to the actions. Okay, so let's talk about the paradox here. Cash can drive acquisition, right? It delivers this immediate rational value. People feel good and they feel responsible when cash is coming back, but it may not alone drive attachment. And we certainly see this, right? It's expected, people want it, they say they want it, but that may not be the emotional attachment that's going to drive deeper loyalty and deeper bonds. So we want to think about this a little bit more. And when we think about this, the way we look at this is winning programs combine both, right? Can we still offer this financial utility, what everyone wants, but also bring in some emotional experiences, something that deepens that bond. And we'll get into the details of what that means here. Okay, Kelsey, I'll put you on the spot again for another poll question. So this will pop up on your screens. If you had to optimize your reward strategy for one outcome over the next 12 months, what would you prioritize most?
Few responses are coming in, and we are Tied for the bottom three. Top one is new member acquisition so far.
Interesting.
Yep, so our highest vote is new member acquisition with a few on the remaining items.
Yeah. Well, and not surprising, right? Certainly in our discussions with folks, that's high on the list. And I think that speaks well to when we think about balancing and making sure that we're providing both sides of the equation. Awesome. All right. Well, let's continue on from the poll here. So the big question here is I'm probably creating some confusion, right? Hey, cashback is great. Everyone wants it. Everyone expects it. But, something else might need to be driving loyalty. So are we overall optimizing for the wrong outcome? Are we thinking too much of the cashback scenario? I lost my mouse here. There we go. And there's value in both of these, right? So we want to really remind everyone, monetary rewards are important. They do drive enrollment. They do drive acquisition. So right back to our last poll, if you're looking to acquire and that's where your priorities are, this is important. These rewards are table stakes and they are going to bring people in the door. And that is going to be a key part of your acquisition strategy. So we don't want to lose that, right? We want to make sure we're maintaining that and we're protecting it and honoring what people are looking for in these programs. But there are things that we need to understand when we think about cashback that we should be aware of. And these are not meant to say cashback is bad at all, but it's good to know why there might be some limitations on what drives true engagement and loyalty. First, cash rewards are easily forgotten. So I bet if I asked all of you, what was the exact dollar amount of the last cash reward that got deposited back into your account? I bet maybe one of you knows. I certainly don't, right? It gets mixed in with everything else. And that's where the mental accounting comes in, right? Is cash ends up being part of a bigger bucket. I paid for my Netflix subscription for $30 and I got a cash back in here for 29. So it's all lumped together. It's valuable. It's bringing me some utility, but it's not rising to the top as something that kind of stands out. So there's this lack of emotional connection. And I really think this last one's kind of interesting is lower social signal. When was the last time you not just remembered how much cash back you got, but you told your friend or your family or your neighbor, hey, I just got $40 cash back on my card. Isn't that cool? Well, you might have, but that's usually not the conversation we hear, right? We hear people talking about the super cool thing that they redeem for, not the, I redeem for cash. And again, it's not to say it's bad, right? Cash is bringing utility. It's probably bringing them some happiness, but it's not one of these things where people are usually shouting to the rooftops that, wow, I got some cash back and hey, this is super cool. But again, I don't want to show that we're diminishing the value of cash. I just want to outline kind of how it fits into what people think about. Now, when we think about experiential rewards, this is where we see that emotional loyalty. These drive real emotional value. They drive lifetime impact. And I can give you a story. Kelsey's heard me talk about this before. And this goes back to, do you talk about your cash rewards? So I used to be a pretty big traveler, Marriott rewards. I had more points than I could ever do anything with. And I redeemed them for this set of headphones like 6 years ago. I still love these headphones. I still hold these up. I'm proud that I got these, and it's an experiential thing rather than I could have put the cash in my account. I could have, booked a trip or something like that. But I have something now that it's in front of me every day and I attach it to that brand. So it really creates a very different connection. And I want to say experiences over material goods as well. So I held up a material good, but it does stand out for me. Experiences go deeper as well. And you'll see sometimes, employee reward programs where they'll give people some unique experience rather than, a little bit of cash. And people up front usually say, well, I kind of like the cash, but once they go through that experience, they remember that one. That's the one that sticks with them. That's the one that stays with them long term. So this drives a very different emotional response than typical cash rewards do. and this is a fun slide to me too, the numbers prove it. And I want to state, this is not a stat we pulled from the internet or from some article out there. This is data that I have analyzed directly across programs. And we see very consistently members who redeem for experiential rewards spend up to 4 times more. Doesn't mean that there's specific cause, and we can get into the details of that later if we need. But there's definitely correlation here. We are seeing this, and I see it anywhere between 3 and 5x, but the average is about 4. That's a big number. That's a big difference, and that can play a big role in when you're talking about these programs to your leadership teams and seeking funding and all that fun stuff. So pretty amazing stat, and it's one I was surprised by when we first kind of stumbled into this, but we're seeing it very consistently now. Okay, this is kind of the fun part, I think. We can talk about this. It's not just talk. This is all built on real world case studies. There's a ton of research out there. I'm going to walk you through a couple that I think are relevant. So we're going to start with a Goodyear tire salesperson experiment. And yes, Goodyear tires has nothing really to do with what we're talking about here. But this research is more about behavior, like how people act. And this was a kind of a fun experiment. So they took salespeople and they split them into 2 groups. And for one group, they gave them cash rewards for selling an increment of tires. And for the other group, they gave them a selection of merchandise and travel rewards. You can see on the screen, the group that got access to the merchandise and rewards instead of the cash had a significantly higher ROI. So they had a positive ROI, whereas the group that received cash rewards actually fell into the negative because the cash was offsetting the profits from the sales that they were driving. So this is a great example of, and you can see the title at the bottom is the psychology of points. And we see this a lot when we look at research. People act differently when they get in this type of environment where they're collecting points and potentially have the ability to redeem on something that's not in cash. And we see this over and over again. I could share a ton of different studies that really dig into the details. I thought this was a fun one because it shows something a little bit outside the norm of what we might see on a day-to-day basis, but it really shows customer behavior and member behavior. I want to get a little bit deeper into a different one. There's a study done here that looked into a couple of different things. So they wanted to look into mental accounting, like how do you think about cash versus some of the other things, the fungible, rational nature of it. How do you think of spending framing, right? I mentioned, we tend to think of cash rewards as falling into a big bucket, right? It's part of everything else. And then what's the expectation once we go down that road, once we start offering cash and people get used to it and maybe it backs off later. And they went through all the details of this and came back with some really interesting findings. So they went through 4 experiments. They had 320 participants. And they went through 12 performance rounds, and they gave the people that were participating difficult but attainable goals. And we had some pretty interesting thoughts. So I like this. They had a cash bonus if they performed, but it was framed as part of their total pay, right? So they're getting a little bit of a bump because they performed at a certain level, or they can earn a $10 movie gift card. And I think when you think about it just on the surface, this would be one where if you did a survey, you probably would have a whole bunch of people say, I'd rather have the cash reward than the movie gift card, right? It's probably our natural reaction. That's certainly what I would have thought. Not the case though. What they saw was, the non-cash group performed significantly better than the cash group. These tangible rewards drove a lot higher commitment to their goals. And it was also a notion that they found in the study that this unexpected tangible rewards are really what drove the behavior. So this was proof that we saw where cashback wasn't the key driver. It wasn't the behavior motivator. It was something that was non-cash that really drove this behavior. And I think this is fascinating when we try to think about what some of these things do to drive member behavior. And this is just an interesting kind of aside to this. So for the cashback group, when they took that cash away, their performance went actually back below baseline. So the performance of that group actually dropped to below where they were before, because we set an expectation, right? It would be like saying, I'm going to give you a salary today. I'm going to give you an extra 2% if you perform well. And then when you don't perform well and I took that 2% back, people get angry. They get, it's trust. It's, I just didn't feel good about that money being taken away from me because I counted on it. But this tangible other experiential good was more of a bonus. It was fun. It was exciting to get. So this is kind of an interesting one to see where, we set an expectation with cashback, but taking that cashback away dropped things even below the normal baseline, which I thought was pretty fascinating. Okay, so we've talked about all this. What's the answer? Where do we go? Well, our belief is a hybrid approach. And we think that having a mix of both cash and points and experiences is going to yield the best engagement. And this comes right back to our first few slides. Are you Apple or Android? There are some people that want to be in one of those two camps, and they have reasons for doing that. And we want to try and appeal to both of those audiences, right? Give them the choice to figure out which makes most sense for them at any given time. So combining these is what we believe is going to be the differentiator. You have cash as your baseline. It's your acquisition play. That's what people expect. It's table stakes, but experiences are what starts to differentiate your program from the other ones. It's also important when you're thinking about this to understand your audience. When you think about experiences, we do see different demands or different expectations from different audiences. Younger members tend to lean more towards experiential things than older members. So this is where the mix actually even becomes more important, because you don't want to dismiss one audience over the other. You want to be able to cater to both of those. So it's important to look deeply into your audience, into all the demographics, and get a good understanding of where you think they might fall into their expectations for some of these rewards, and then position them accordingly. Now, this is, I believe, an important one. If you're getting into offering non-cash rewards, highlight them, show them off, drive that excitement. If they come to your program and maybe they're visiting a website that talks about the program, seeing some cool experience that they can get access to, even if they don't redeem for it, can really drive engagement. It can drive excitement and make people see something that separates you from someone else, again, down the street that's only offering cashback. Your communications should drive here. So anything that you can do to highlight this aspect, even though you may see less redemption in this space than cashback, can really change the attitude and behavior of people in the program. Okay, we have another poll. What is the biggest barrier to adding more experiential or non-cash rewards into your program?
This is the final poll we ask of you guys.
I need to pick multiple answers here.
Yeah, this is an interesting one.
Yeah.
All right, everything is tied right now.
Oh, wow.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
Will there be a prominent one? All right, what's coming to the top as the most prominent is uncertainty about what members actually want.
Yeah. It's a tough one, right? And we probably contributed a little bit to that, but hopefully we're trying to show, where we believe their expectations are. So, okay, I have a couple of more slides. I think I'm pretty close to on time, maybe a little bit late, but let's just talk about some key takeaways then. Cash is the expectation, but in our view, it's not enough. You are going to need something a little bit different to separate you, to create that differentiation. And research shows, and I showed you 2 articles, that there's dozens of these that you can find out there that go into deep academic research that talks about why non-cash rewards have a deeper impact. And to accomplish this, the best approach is a hybrid solution. Let's figure out how we bring both of these together to offer the best of both worlds. Now, what can you take away from all this? So there's a few things that you could go do yourself to start thinking about what the next steps might be. Audit your rewards mix. What are you offering today? Put together a detailed list of what that looks like. Define the outcome that you want to drive. Are you trying to go acquire new, younger members? That's going to have an impact on kind of how you want that mix to work out. Make sure the experience is easy and flexible. That probably goes without saying, but we like to remind folks on that. Think about testing a hybrid rewards model if you're not there yet. It is important to segment your members and personalize the offer. And I think we're probably all tired of hearing about AI, but personalization is going to become a really, really important thing soon, because we're going to see much deeper personalization come out of a lot of these products and services soon. And then I'm always a big fan, measure it. Look at what the impact is, not just from sign-ups or some of the other engagement metrics. Look at your bottom line, look at retention, look at spend, look at the things that are important to your business. So these are things to think about as we start considering what a solution like this might look like. Okay, I have talked plenty, so I think it's a great time to open it up for questions from everyone else.
Thank you, Warren. That was great. There were a lot of surprising statistics that came up there, especially in the poll answers as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the one that really jumped out at me was early on when you had the 4x slide of people engaging 4 times more on the rewards. And so I kind of I'll start with a cause and effect type question. In your view, is it the different reward that's getting people to engage more, or do people who go for experiences just typically are more engaged members to begin with?
Yeah. Fantastic question. And that one comes up all the time. So, and I'm careful to position those numbers as correlation. Anytime I'm talking about, we know there's correlation. We can't prove cause, and it's a really difficult thing to kind of get down that road to really show it. But kind of the takeaway I get from that is that the impact is big enough that there's something there to be watching. There's something there to be monitoring. And the way I look at how to think about that moving forward is test and learn some things in your program, and then track those members and see what happens down the road, right? Look for someone who does a redemption, and then see if their spend themselves increases over time. So it's more of a forward-looking metric to keep track of than thinking about cause or correlation. Right now, we see correlation.
I guess if nothing else, it supports that you have a hybrid audience. Some people who are interested in that, and some people who are interested in cash.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Any other questions in the group, Kelsey?
Yeah, a few are rolling in here. One, the next question I have is, how much segmentation is actually needed to see results? We have limited bandwidth and want to make sure we're not overcomplicating.
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. So there's no real easy answer for everyone, but I would at least think about kind of your core 2 to 4 audiences that are important to you from a business standpoint. So one of the common things we hear is we are really trying to bring in a younger audience, right? Gen Z, millennial, that's important to us. We need to figure out how to expand that spread. So think about your target audiences, who you're really trying to attract. And that's where to start from a segmentation perspective. So for you, if you've got limited bandwidth, think about 2, right? Your general core audience. And then think about this young Gen Z millennial audience that you're really trying to drive different acquisition for, and start there. And then you can expand as you start to see some impact. But I wouldn't go out and send, 17 different segments, because you're not going to be able to manage it all. Start simple and expand from there.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. The next question we did receive is on the 90% spend on rewards card stat. Is reward card defined as one that is cashback only?
No, that would be any card that offers any sort of reward or incentive would be considered falling into that stat.
Perfect. The one, Pam actually put it in our chat overall, but wanted to just kind of ask your opinion. Andy provided some initial thought. But her question was, do we see more cash rewards redemption as inflation continues to grow?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have the data in front of me to truly answer that. My feeling is it's probably there, and one of the reasons I would say that is we do see cyclical redemption based on other factors, right? So seasonal shopping, people shopping just before Christmas to try and offset, their Christmas shopping costs is definitely something that we see. So I would actually love to go dig into that one, into the data myself, and maybe we can share that in a future webinar and show some actual stats there.
Awesome. And then I think the last question that has rolled in from some of our attendees is, how does an annual fee impact redemption behavior?
Yeah, fascinating question too. So I'm going to admit, I don't have a direct answer for that. Because I think what tends to happen is it figures into people's minds as a sunk cost, sort of, right? You get into it, you've paid that fee, and now you're in, and your redemption behavior is probably a little bit different. I would suspect some people are looking at the redemptions to try and offset that cost, but I don't have the data in front of me to back that. That's my suspicion, kind of based on what I've seen.
Yeah, these are good ones. I'm gonna have to go Google that. I'm curious.
Yeah. Sparked a lot of good thought in some people today.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Let me just refresh our question tab here. All right, one last question, then we can wrap up. It looks like when you say cash as baseline and experiences as differentiation, what does that look like in practice for a checking product? Is that one account or a tiered structure?
Well, you could do it both ways, but we talked about simplicity, and I firmly believe in that. So you can have one account where your earnings are flexible, right? You can choose to take your earnings and apply them to cashback, or apply them to an experiential reward. And that gives your members the best of both worlds and the ability to define their destiny.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's a concern for a lot of credit unions that might be a little resource strapped when it comes to execution on something like this. I know that something that really bogs us down is if you have two accounts competing for your members, and members are jumping back and forth between them, that can add a lot of work. So yeah, I'd be curious again to chat more with the group about how they design for that, and what seems to be working out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Great question.
Awesome. Those are all the questions that we have that have been submitted here. But feel free to reach out if there are further questions, or reach out to Andy. He knows how to get in touch with us as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Warren. I think there's one more slide there.
Oh yes, we do have another slide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bring that up. No, thank you.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much, Andy, for letting us co-host this with you and be part of your group here today. We hope you all took something away with it. It seems like a lot of thought-provoking questions. So if you want to learn a little bit more or have any questions for us, like I said, feel free to scan the QR code or connect directly with Andy. We would love to continue the conversation.
Thanks so much, Kelsey. And yeah, you guys have a really interesting solution. So I was grateful that you were able to come and spark this conversation with us today. We're kind of a safe space where vendors are not allowed inside, but we are curious about what's going on out there. So this really gave us a great opportunity to kind of learn and see things from your point of view and ask some questions. So thanks again for putting this together.
Yes, of course. Thank you all. Hope you have a great day.